I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Charter Committee, Standing Committee of the Contra Costa Board of Education, and call to order at 9:02. And due to COVID, this meeting is being held on a web-based platform, and it's being conducted via Zoom. All members of the public who are logged on to the meeting will be muted. Only board members and staff will have the ability to unmute themselves and speak during the meeting. For public comment, members of the public wishing to comment will have 2 minutes to speak. And let's go to 1.2, roll call. Michelle, would you please take roll?
Sure. Trustee Laura.
Present. Trustee
Butler.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, so general information. This is posted, right? And so people can read it. I don't necessarily have to go through all of that. Okay, so we have the general information that's public, posted. And let's go down to 3.1, public comment. Michelle, is there any public comment?
Let's see. If anyone here would like to make a public comment, you can either use the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in, press *9. I don't see anyone calling in, and I don't see any raised hands, so seeing none.
Okay, all right. So then we go to our business action items, and we'll start with 4.1, approval of the agenda. And Trustee Butler, do you have any revisions at this time for the agenda?
Well, I just want to mention, so 4.5, the MOU template, it kind of goes with the discussion about the MOU template we're going to have earlier in the meeting. I don't know if it's worth moving it up or not. I just wanted to make a note of that.
Okay. So if we've covered, but when we get there, 4.5, if we've covered that already, then we can just skip it. How about if we do that?
No. The MOU template was to look, in looking at it was to look at our template more closely in terms of the discussion, also about, what we do with all the charter MOUs. And we're talking about whether those should be extended and all that. But it's okay. Let's just keep going. I just want to make a note. That's what that is. If we need to skip
So
down there, we can.
The order of the agenda items is okay?
Yeah, I guess it's okay.
I thought this was the way you asked them.
Yeah, I did ask for it this way, Michelle. You did it the way I asked for those last two. But then when I was reading the minutes, I realized that MOU template that related to the discussion about the template that I think we're going to have in 4.3 in the chart in the staff report. Right. I think Mr. McChesney was going to talk about that.
Okay, so we will approve them as presented?
Sure.
Okay, great. That's approved. And then next we go to approval of the minutes. And they look good to me.
Okay.
Trustee Butler.
Yes, I had a change I wanted to see on the minutes.
Okay.
When you're in the section 4.3 charter committee update, and I just noticed this morning when I was looking again, but option number 1 at the very end where it says take board action to approve a blanket extension of all MOUs to align with the new charter terms. I think instead of terms, it should be charter extension timelines, because that's what we're really talking about there. Can we change that word to charter timelines? We're talking about the timeline of the MOU, not like what's the bullet points in the MOU.
Sure, I will make that change, but just an FYI, term was meant to be a function of time, not.
Well, in option 2, then it mentions again to align the terms. And I think in that option, we're talking about.
It was always meant as a function of time, a term, like a.
Okay, then why don't we just add terms / timeline or something, because
I
it's
can
not
change it to
clear.
timeline if it's like, I mean, people are gonna read this 10 years from now. We want it to be clear, so I could definitely change it. I'm making a note right now.
Just for option 1, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
And with that
Okay.
revision, we will approve them as revised.
Yes.
Agreed?
Thank you.
Agreed? Okay. we
Agreed.
Agreed.
I'm
All
still
right.
trying to get my other screen larger. Can I make the screen, the agenda on my laptop larger, Michelle, or do you have to do that?
It's as large as can be on my side. So on your
Okay.
screen, do you also have our pictures on the side?
No, your pictures are at the top.
Oh, okay. So in between where the agenda is and the pictures of the people, there's like a little white, like 2 little white lines. Do you see it?
Yeah, I know that happens when it's on the side. I can move it on the side and do that.
Okay, and then if you
Try
scooch it
that.
over, make our
Yeah.
pictures smaller, and then your agenda will become larger.
Okay, got it. Great. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Great. Okay, next we are at 4.3, the charter staff report. And I believe that's Mr. McChesney.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, trustees. Michelle, do you want me to control, or do you want to do it?
If you have the item up, I co-hosted you. If you'd like to, you can.
Yep, sure. Give me 1 second. And can you see the,
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
great.
Perfect.
Oops, it says February 4th on it. Maybe we could.
Did I bring up the wrong meeting? Let me make sure it's the right one. Maybe I just forgot to change that date. Yeah, this is the right one. So 2 items that the committee asked for me to look into further and bring back additional information for this meeting in an ongoing discussion. The issue about the charter MOUs and the charter board appointments. So starting with the MOUs, just a refresher. The education trailer bill offered an extension of 2 years to all current operating charter terms. I actually included also a memo from DWK about this issue in the board materials, noted that they also recommend authorizers looking at MOUs to align with the new terms. And I rearranged this chart so that it shows you the new expiration timelines that we'll be looking at in the future. So you can kind of see based on the color coding there, right, how many renewals we'll be addressing each year starting in 2024 with Making Waves in Golden Gate, then Invictus in 25, 3 schools in 26, and finally 2 schools in 27. So that's kind of the timeline for renewals based on these charter term extensions. So a couple notes about what's coming given this MOU issue that we've kind of identified. First and foremost, based on my research, Golden Gate and Making Waves Academy, which you'll remember are the first 2 in this upcoming chart, do not actually have operating MOUs with their current charter terms. So there's no MOU on file. And that means that they can continue through the rest of their charter term, or we could try to address that. But this is kind of a unique situation in that the first 2 charters that will be up for renewal are the 2 that actually, the only 2 in our portfolio that do not have memorandum of understanding executed with this board. Jump in anytime if you have questions or thoughts. Just kind of going forward to start to look at the actual MOUs that will ultimately expire before their charter terms, and also to point out some of the differences in versions over the years. The next charter to expire, remember in that chart, was Invictus. This is a snippet from the Invictus MOU, and you can see the language highlighted there. This one's actually a little muddy. I thought maybe Mike, Mr. Tucker might even have an opinion here, but you can see in provision B there, the MOU shall commence on the date upon which it is fully executed and shall run concurrently with the 5-year term of the approved charter. Of course, now this is a 7-year term, so a little muddy there. And then F, the MOU will continue in effect until mutually modified in writing, except that the MOU shall terminate upon the expiration, rescission, or revocation of the charter. The expiration being extended by 2 years now. So theoretically, I think this language is at least problematic in that it could be argued that the Invictus MOU could expire prior to the charter term expiring, if that makes sense. So this is the first example of that. The next year, going back to this chart again, I'll just kind of go there. Remember, that was Invictus. The next year we have 3 schools in 26. And using Caliber as an example, this is representative more of our most recent MOU kind of template, as Trustee Butler was referring to earlier. This language is very similar in pretty much all of the remaining charters, MOUs. This one I think is much more clear cut that it will in fact expire before the term of the charter. You can see the language there. Shall cover the term of the charter 5 years. Commencing on a specific date and ending on a specific date. Of course, this charter now ends 2 years past that date. So it's pretty clear that Caliber, and I believe all of the remaining charters to come in 26 and 27 in terms of expiration dates, would have memorandums of understanding that expire 2 years before the charter does. So just pointing out what's to come there, and some of the differences in language that we'll have to navigate. Some other things to consider. An MOU is not a legal requirement. I think Mr. Tucker and this board has discussed that before, but it has become a common and advisable practice and something that we do regularly now in terms of approvals and renewals. Approving new MOUs does require the engagement of both parties to some extent. That the charter and the authorizer have to come to the table. So that's something to consider. The first potential gap between an existing MOU and a charter term is still 1 to 2 years away, depending upon what we do with Golden Gate and Making Waves, who again don't even have MOUs at this time. And then, back to kind of the earlier point that I raised in our last meeting, I think it's advisable and a good practice that when we do address the MOUs, that we continue to standardize and really try to align those documents so that we don't get significant disparities between versions over the course of time. I'm going to pause there because that's the totality of what I have to report right now on the MOU issue. I can continue into the charter board appointments and make my report there if you want, or I can entertain any questions or comments now. Or obviously, Mr. Tucker was invited today as well.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to stay on this topic for a minute. Trustee Butler, you have comments, questions?
Yeah, this is fine. But I guess my question is, it would be great to bring the MOUs up to date or standardize them or whatever, as your point number 4 is. Now, would we be able to do that? And what about with Making Waves, for example, when they don't even have an MOU? Did someone check back that I guess, not to doubt you, Neil, but I didn't remember that they didn't have an MOU at all. I thought. No,
it's a very good question, and I was under the impression that they would have had one as well, because obviously we've approved MOUs before their renewal and after. But I actually went back and listened to the recording and looked at the minutes from that meeting and the subsequent meetings for about the next 6 months. And it was never addressed. It was never raised in the approval of their renewal. My feeling, just from listening and a vague memory of that time period, is that there was it was a very smooth and uncontroversial renewal, and the MOU was just kind of overlooked to a certain extent. Obviously I wasn't there, so I can't speak on the record, but based on my my research, and I also talked to Making Waves themselves, there is no operating MOU. And then Golden Gate, obviously unique circumstances there as is an effective dependent charter. I think it's reasonable that they actually don't have an MOU, in my opinion, but it's more logical that that one was not there.
Okay, so
To answer your first question, Trustee Butler, I think obviously we can request or come to the table and ask our charters to engage in a discussion about updating their MOUs. And I think there would be some goodwill for that conversation, but it's not necessarily something, I'll defer to Mr. Tucker here as well, that we could require or that we can mandate, in my opinion.
Mr. Tucker, what is your response to that? Curious.
Those MOUs are not necessarily a legal requirement. I agree with Mr. McChesney that it would be very difficult to say to the charters, you have to enter into this MOU where we're requiring it at this point. Typically, it's done right around the time of renewal or approval, or made not necessarily a condition of that, but it's when the charter submits their information, it's usually discussed at that point that if you are approved or renewed, we're going to expect you to enter into an MOU, the terms of which are agreeable. So long and short of it, I do agree with Mr. McChesney that it would be very difficult to require them to actually enter into an MOU in the middle of the charter term.
Just to add a little bit more to that, I think that's particularly the case with the first two charters that are expiring, Golden Gate and Making Waves, given that there is no document at all, right? So to ask them to engage in or enter into an MOU when there hasn't been one at all could be more challenging than the other charters who have existing MOUs, and I think can recognize that, look, there's a gap here that was not planned for, and we need to address that. That seems like less of a bridge, a gap to bridge than the other two. That's just my opinion. But depending upon the will of the board, I'm happy to engage in those conversations.
Interesting. Sarah, Trustee Butler, do you have any other questions or comments?
well, yeah, I guess that's partly why I put the MOU, asked for the MOU template to be on the agenda, because some of the things in the MOU template are more like at making sure that the charter continues to follow state and federal laws and things like that, which I would think they're doing anyway. So there may be some things in our MOU template that are would be more agreeable, some points than others. But it's something to consider. But we don't have to decide anything today about that part of it. But what I would like to know more about is what are other charter authorizers doing about this issue? Because this issue would apply to any charter authorizer in the state that has an MOU.
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
Do we know the answer to that?
So I've had very limited conversations on that point. I have had a couple, and I think the impression that I got right now is the approach will likely be just a blanket extension, right? So just taking the existing MOUs in an authorizer's portfolio and agreeing to align those MOUs, the current ones, without changes to the new charter terms. So basically adding 2 years to align with the 2 years for the charter terms. That's been the limited conversation I've had. I have not done broad research on this at this point, but I can look further into that, see if there's alternative options.
So whoever you might have talked to about that, did they imply that they had already done that, or this was their intention to do coming up?
The latter.
Okay.
That was my impression.
Okay, well, we should probably just continue to keep an eye out. How are other charter authorizers handling this?
Absolutely.
I wonder if Mr. Tucker has any other thoughts about the topic of just continuing the MOUs.
I think that that is totally appropriate and fine. I think that could bridge the gap easily, but more not necessarily easily, but it's a easier way to bridge the gap and make sure that you have some outlining of your relationship to continue during this term when the charters are extended and the MOU is not applicable.
Okay.
Okay, all right, I have a few comments. Trustee Butler, you, anything else you wanted to add?
Not right now.
Okay. Well, we're talking about the quality of the education for these students, our students who go to these schools. And I think, I don't want to get into the discussion why there would not be an MOU, but an MOU is a contract between, those schools and the county to provide that kind of best practice, but to what are the best educational practices for maintaining a value or the quality of education for these students. I'm really concerned about that. It also, an MOU is part of, I think, our oversight. As I just think that it's a necessary interaction to come to some agreements about those things. And I think it helps everyone. It helps us to see what the expectations are, and it helps give directions to what our expectations are for the charters. And I think it helps everyone, and it creates, better quality of education for our students. I really do. And I think we can take on this challenge if it's going to be one. And it's a contract we make in good faith. Nobody's trying to do a gotcha or anything. This is an agreement about what's best for these students and maintaining a good environment for them. And my recommendation would be to, yes, update these MOUs that we have, and the ones that don't have one is that we pursue getting MOUs for them so that we can go through this process. And it, like I said, it doesn't have to be a necessarily negative thing. It could be a good way of collaborating around creating the best environment for our students. So that is, those are my comments about this. And I like the idea of doing the research to find out what other counties are doing and finding the best practices. I'm all about what are the best practices. So thank you for this. And let's see, any last comments, Trustee Butler?
Well, so the first two, the charter term is up this June 22 for Making Waves. I mean, the original one, that now they've got the 2-year extension. But if we wanted to consider requesting an MOU to be developed for either of those schools, I don't know if we'd have to do it right away this spring, or it could be done later. But the rest of them, we have a little more time. It seems like it would be, it's helpful to have a little more time. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
That's correct. So nothing changes effectively for the next year and a half, right? Because your 2 charters that are now operating without MOUs will continue the same way. The first gap where an existing MOU would expire would be the end of next school year. So June 23. So you do have some time.
That's good.
Well,
Yeah.
does that, is that what you see also?
Yeah, I don't see like, oh, we got to do this quickly right away and put pressure on anybody, but to take our time to do it well And, no surprises. Everybody knows that this is something that we want to work together on. So yeah, that would be fine, to take our time with it. And it's good that we do have time to explore, again, the best options and the best practices.
Right. So for Invictus, though, their original charter term is up 2023. So we would want to figure this out before then. That's a year from now.
Okay, so maybe that's when we keep on our agenda and continue talking about it. What do you think?
Right. I mean, to me, you'd want to figure it out when the old MOU would expire, which in that case would be 2023 and not in
Okay.
2025.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we had mentioned that before, that we would do this in chronological order, so we'll just take one at a time. And I think that'll work well.
Yeah, but it sounded like you were saying you thought we should consider an MOU for Making Waves or possibly Golden Gate.
And
their-
Golden Gate.
Yeah, and their charter term originally ended this June, but they have a 2-year extension. But since they don't have a current MOU, it's not like the current MOU is expiring. It would be talking about, could we talk to them about adopting an MOU, which is a
Oh,
little
that's-
more difficult a conversation.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, you're right. You're right. Well, maybe we should give this some more discussion, some more thought. 'Cause I'm just hearing about this, so we can do some more research into it. But yeah, I do think it would be a good idea to do that.
All right,
And
so
then-
maybe we want to continue this agenda item. I mean, have it again as an agenda item at either the next meeting or either one more meeting or 2 more meetings from now of our charter committee.
I agree. I think that would be a good idea.
Okay,
Very
In the
good.
meantime, I'm happy to solicit a broader response from authorizers about what they're doing, so I can bring that information back.
Yeah.
that'd be great.
That'd be great. Good. All right. Sounds good.
Okay, would you like me to move forward?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so the second issue that I'm providing some additional documentation and information about is the charter board appointments item. Just referencing again the ed code that provides this authority, as well as your board policy. In this case, I did reach out to County Office of Education across the state and tried to survey how many are engaging in this practice. These are the responses that I received back. Of course, there's far more counties. This was just county authorizers that I was reaching out to. Far more counties than are on this list. A lot of counties don't have charter schools at all. Others have very small portfolios, but these are the responses I got. So very, very simple, the county office and whether or not they have appointed board trustees to the charters that they authorize. So you can see in short order there, yes or no. I'll give you a second to look at that. I think it's 3 yeses, or roughly 20%. A couple insights that I got from some of the conversations that followed that request for information. Those that do implement the practice generally report minimal application. So in other words, they're not necessarily doing this for all their charters, or they have very, very small charter portfolios or kind of unique circumstances. For instance, we've talked about Santa Clara County has done this one time. They designated the authority to their staff, to their superintendents, rather than the board making the decision. I know one of the other ones on there, San Luis Obispo. They have one charter school that's kind of a unique kind of charter school that's run jointly with the National Guard, and their superintendent actually sits on that board. So also a very unique circumstance. Those COEs that don't exercise this authority generally have some very similar responses. They cite concerns about liabilities and conflict of interest. They understand that it's their authority. Some of them have the language in their MOUs similar to ours. And obviously it's an ed code for everybody, but they've shied away from that practice. Back to the kind of singular example that I've found where there's a more consistent application of this authority is Oakland Unified. I've had some extensive conversations with their team there. I did provide some documentation as part of the board packet that included their implementation plan. They have a rubric for board selection. They provide notices and some level of accountability and annual reporting for their appointees. They've been doing this for 2 years, so still relatively novel approach for them. They had 4 appointments in 2020 and 2 appointments in 2021. They do report it's challenging and time-consuming exercise, and that they've struggled to find the volume or the abundance of candidates that have the right qualifications and that have the availability and willingness to do the work. I think originally their board had thought about putting a trustee on every one of their charters, and that very quickly became unrealistic. They now kind of determine eligibility for an appointment based on notice of concerns, right? So if a charter has multiple notice of concerns from their authorizer, or a particularly serious one, perhaps one that related to governance or something else at that level, then that would kind of trigger the consideration for an appointment. So that's their general practice. Yeah, I think that was it. So, and you've hopefully seen the documents that I provided in the board packet that was shared by OUSD.
Okay, very good. And thank you for doing that research and reaching out to the other county offices. That's great. Thank you. Oh, I do have a question about that. So on your list, all of those offices have charters, but they don't all have people on the board, right?
I'm pretty sure that's the case. I would have to go back and scrub those emails again, but I'm pretty sure that that a lot of counties didn't respond. Some even responded and said, hey, we don't have charters. But I'm pretty sure these are all counties that have charter portfolios.
I see. Okay, great. Thank you. And just, well, I'll say, wait for a little bit later. Trustee Butler, you have questions, comments?
Yeah, let's see. You pointed out that, so can we go back on
Yep.
the, can
Or
you,
would you like?
COE practice survey? You pointed out, okay, report minimal application. I don't think that it's that relevant whether they are appointing whether they're trying to appoint someone to the charter board of every charter that they have or not. You know, as you then stated, they decided to, in the case of Oakland, just to pursue it for the charters that there were concerns about. That makes sense to me. So I don't think just purely numbers is that relevant. But I was glad to see your list of the county offices that had charters. Kern County, I wouldn't have expected that. And San Luis Obispo County, I didn't know about that. So that's interesting. It would be good to see, do they have a, bylaw or whatever, a policy? What do they have in writing that outlines their process?
So I actually asked for that if they, as part of my survey to everybody, and even these 3 counties that have exercised this practice don't really have any extensive policy or protocol in writing, because it's not a very common practice, or they have like in the case of SLO have a very kind of unique circumstance. The only authorizer, candidly, that I could find that had extensive kind of written guidance was OUSD. I didn't survey districts though, so.
Okay, well, SLO, as you mentioned, San Luis Obispo and Kern County, they just went according to the ed code and appointed somebody.
I'm sure they went through some kind of process, on,
Yeah.
if you were to put on paper, probably similar to what Oakland's doing, they, solicited candidates, they did some kind of vetting process and then made an appointment. Although
Mhm.
in the case of San Luis Obispo, it's actually the superintendent that sits on, I think it's called Grizzly Peak or Grizzly Charter Academy. It's this very interesting, unique charter run jointly with the National Guard. So they're kind of it's a really one-off kind of situation.
Wow, well, that's interesting. That's even above the level of appointing a
Yeah.
staff member. like
Yeah.
Santa Clara did.
Yeah. Kern actually, I think has more than one. I think they had a few. I don't know that they have a very large charter portfolio, but they didn't have anything necessarily like in terms of a protocol that they shared with me.
Mhm. But they've appointed someone to a few different charters, did you say?
I think in their case, they have done it more than once, is my recollection.
Okay. Well, interesting. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I saw that you attached some information from OUSD. That's helpful. They have an outline on their website. I included the link on one of our other agenda items in this meeting. Maybe we want to look at some of your attachments. I don't know.
I'm happy to bring anything up.
Was there one in particular, Trustee Butler, you wanted to look at?
No, I mean, Neil put these on here. I think he should say what he thinks is important. This is the staff report, so he's just reporting to us. So it's not, we have this topic on the other agenda item. Well, go ahead,
Right.
Neil.
So well, Michael, I'll give you the mic in a second. I was just responding to the request to provide additional information from Oakland. I think in terms of what they have there, it's a very, very smart and capable team that's doing their district oversight over there. I think they have a sound practice if you were going to approach it. And there might be some nuances in terms of how they have written out their implementation plan that might not be applicable here. For instance, I think they have a larger board and they actually created a subcommittee just for charter appointments. I don't think that necessarily would be applicable in this case, but those are the kinds of things that you would theoretically consider and iterate, maybe use as an example as we write our own policy or protocol, if we were to move forward with this, if that's the will of the board. So I'm just providing it as an exemplar, nothing else really to share.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I know Mr. Tucker maybe had a comment.
Mr.
Yeah,
Tucker, yes.
Thanks, Mr. McChesney. I did want to just offer my analysis to the committee based on my legal research after we last spoke. So after our last board meeting, this item was also discussed, and I took an opportunity to just review what I saw as maybe some potential challenges that could be faced by a charter authorizer in making an appointment. And just in summary, the education code does provide for an opportunity for charter authorizers to make this appointment. However, there are some pretty significant legal and practical challenges, as I see them, that are illustrated in the list of county offices that do not provide for this practice, and in Oakland's approach, which is quite extensive, as Mr. McChesney has pointed out. I think the first item that comes to my mind in reviewing the research, and I think you should be aware of, is when an individual is appointed to a nonprofit board, they actually have an affirmative legal duty to act in the best interests of the charter. So that creates kind of a practical conflict for the person. If there was a situation that came up in which they were asked to take a position for their charter board that was in conflict or maybe not in the best interests of the county office. So that's kind of the first legal and practical issue. And I think that's illustrated in Oakland's approach, which is they have a separate committee, and it sounds like they heavily vet these individuals before they go into these situations. In my mind, just as a practical challenge, I think it would be difficult in those situations for any individual to have to make those types of decisions, because sometimes the road to the potential conclusion of your vote may be long and winding, and it may be difficult to see when you're making a vote as a charter board member how it may impact the county office down the road. Which brings me sort of my second point, which is concerns regarding liability. Typically what will happen if a charter is sued is the authorizer will also be named in the lawsuit, and the allegation will be a failure to properly oversee the charter school. The charter school makes some mistake and it's alleged, well, the charter made a mistake, but authorizer, you should have stopped them from making the mistake or taken some action again to prevent the charter school from taking that. If you have a representative on the charter board, it makes the potential defenses to any liability or risk liability there pretty messy, for lack of a better phrase. So for example, you have a representative taking a vote on the charter board, and then later liability springs forth from that vote. Now the authorizer is going to face a challenging situation of how they're going to defend themselves and separate themselves potentially from the action that the charter school took when you have this representative who potentially voted on the issue. Other more legal challenge that could be faced by an individual sitting on those boards, they'll have access to confidential information, particularly in closed session. So you could see a situation in which they're pulled into a closed session, something is discussed internally. They are legally prohibited from sharing that information outside of that closed session. But this person is also serving as a representative for the oversight authority. So that puts them in a potentially awkward and challenging situation where they're going to have to decide to follow their legal duty to maintain the confidentiality of that information, or follow their more generalized duty to the county office in providing information that may be pertinent to oversight responsibilities. So those are the types of things I can see as potentially challenging. I think it makes sense now, seeing the list of schools and agencies that do not follow this practice. And I compare that to the potential benefits, which are you could just have someone attend these meetings and they could observe what's going on and report back relatively quickly. Some substantial information that is not necessarily maintained in the board minutes. Board minutes, I mean, some agencies do better than others in providing more accurate board minutes. But you can just send someone to the board meetings and report back to you. I think you get the same effect.
So that's very interesting. If I could just respond with a couple of follow-up questions,
Yes.
Trustee Laura. I'm kind of trying to imagine what, well, first of all, if you're appointing, if the charter authorizer is appointing a board member to the charter school, it's true, then they are on the charter board. That is their first priority. They aren't supposed to be there to represent the county office. That wouldn't be the role. But as you were talking, I was trying to picture exactly what scenario would be a conflict between the charter school and the county office. I mean, the budget or whatever. But I could see it if there's a lawsuit, what you were saying. But at the same time, if that was such a big problem, you wouldn't have, like in San Luis Obispo, the county superintendent on the charter board. And in Santa Clara, you have someone from the Santa Clara County office staff on the charter board. That seems like it's even more of a conflict. So I don't think it's insurmountable. I think the point is, it's in the law that it gives us, the charter authorizers, the ability to appoint someone. I think that's because we don't have somebody going to every charter school board meeting and reporting back. But it's not that that person who's representing who we appoint is supposed to report back to us at every meeting or even at all. That would depend on how it's written up. But, you know, looking at Oakland's, well, Oakland does say they report back generally about what's in open session periodically. But I don't think any of this rules out. To me, it doesn't rule out whether we should pursue this or not.
Yeah. Is
So
anyone else hearing a sound besides me?
maybe
Yeah.
that's my work
that-
at my house. I'll put it on mute and see if it goes right.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yes, I think it's important for us to pursue this, to continue to pursue this. And I guess it's a matter of purpose. And to me, we have some charters that have challenges, have issues, and there's concerns, and also the whole board is very concerned about this. That's our job for oversight, and we get reports. And the whole board is very, very interested in this aspect, because some of our board members have gone to these meetings and they notice, you know, there's not a lot of transparency. There's not enough transparency in some of them. And there should be, because it should be a public meetings. And then, so like going into public closed session and then have your whole meeting in there. I mean, so what we want are the best practices. And really, I would change this phrase of best interest of the schools to best interest of the students. So I think it's the best interest of the students for us to have a board appointed person on their board, or someone on the board for that. And again, not punitive, but to provide this open transparency and some diversity of thought. And in my conversation with the board president of Santa Clara County, he was saying, yeah, they appointed somebody, again, was a staff person, to go to those meetings, be part of it. And it was a problem school, and there's a lot fewer of those problems. So I think just the participation of someone from the district, and I do not expect that person to come and report to the board in any sense. Hopefully they'll be talking to, Mr. McChesney, and but with, again, an eye towards the best interests of students, and with that focus. Oakland has gone a long way with this in this area. I know, and it's important that we look at what they've done and that we learn from what other places what they're doing and how they're doing it. But in terms of the purpose that we want to do this for, I think it's that we do want what's in the best interest of students. So therefore the school needs to be, of good quality. So I hope that we will pursue this seriously. And it's not like we're going to put one in every school or every charter school. But there is a reason for this, and there's a purpose. And I would really like to hear the whole board have this discussion as well about it again. So hopefully we can put that, and we will continue also to discuss it. So let's see. That's what I have. Trustee Butler, what are your thoughts here?
Sorry, I had it on mute.
There you are.
Yeah, no, I think we should call for public comment.
Oh, sorry. Yes, public comment. I'm sorry. Michelle, is there public comment on this issue? Thank you.
Yes, we do have a public comment. Jamoke Hinton, can I get some test audio?
Yes. Test,
Great.
test.
Yes, and
Hi.
I have a 3-minute timer here, and I'll go ahead and start your 3 minutes when you begin speaking, so at your convenience.
Sure. I hope I won't take up that much of your time. Just appreciate the conversation. I've had the honor and pleasure to sit in your seats. I was on the Oakland Unified School District Board of Ed for 12 years up until 2020, and was a part of the conversations about kind of activating this part of the law, because no one had really been doing it. My opinion was from my colleagues that it was a bit of a gotcha. It was an attempt to kind of go after and kind of spy on. And so, Trustee Laura, your comments really resonate with me around this is about good governance. This is about student outcomes, not about going after adults. Your comments about increasing transparency, increasing diversity of thought, excellent, I think, premise and value to be kind of considering this. And then the last thing I would share is my experience in Oakland was we actually had a charter school that approached us and asked us to appoint someone to their board because they needed support. They thought that there's huge kind of blow up transition around leadership. And the board was, not fully functioning, and they basically came to a board meeting on multiple occasions and asked for the support. And then it took a while because I think we did try to go back and go, are we doing this for everyone? Are we doing it for the people who need it the most? What are the parameters? And it is my understanding that I think Alameda School District actually got sued because someone divulged some closed session practices, right? Or, what was happening in closed session. And so again, this integrity thing, I think, is like kind of the core value of good governance supports student outcomes. And we have to be, focused in that way. So I now have the role as Bay Area Local Advocacy Director for CCSA. And so however you might feel to use me, or how I might support, the charters that I support and advocate for them to be, again, in kind of good practice and good standing around this. I'm at your service. And thank you all for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Hinton. Thank you very much.
Can I, just for the notes, what does CCSA stand for, if you don't mind?
I apologize.
That's okay.
California Charter School Association.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment?
I am seeing none.
Okay,
I just wanted to request that Michelle get her email address in case we want to follow up with Ms. Hinton regarding what she said. I thought that was very interesting and informative.
absolutely, absolutely. That's great. I agree. We could,
Thank you.
yeah, that's some important thing to do. Reach out to those who offer help and support. I do like that it was looked at as something that a way to support the charter schools also. Okay, are we finished with that? 4.4.
That's the extent of my presentation.
Okay. So now we're going to 4.5, which is the charter MOU template discussion. And is it to
So I guess we
just,
did change the order.
okay,
Do you want to do thank you, Neil. Do we want to do 4.4? Or what do you
What do
think,
you
Trustee
think?
Laura?
Well,
Yeah, I'm gonna ask trustee Butler for her opinion on this one.
I don't think we changed the order in the up there. Up in whatever it was, 4.1.
For to discuss the process of appointing. Looks
Okay,
like we've
on
done
your, okay, I must be looking at an old, on my other screen, it says it differently. So yes, 4.4 Charter Board appointment, right? That's
Uh,
next.
Oh, yeah, mine is different too. Okay. Charter Board appointment, 4.4. Okay, so we're up 4.5 right now.
No, we haven't,
We're not there yet?
no. We just finished 4.3, the staff, right?
The staff report, including, Mr. Machese, you did 4.4, correct?
Mine was all 4.3, the staff reports. It does obviously dovetail into both 4.4 and 4.5. But those are your agenda items to do.
I see,
please.
I see. Okay.
Right, these
sorry
are the
about
two, that I asked to be on the agenda.
that. Gotcha. Okay, so 4.4, Charter Board appointment, and trustee Butler. Go ahead.
Right, okay, so I'll take this away, so to speak. So this, we talked about this topic at our previous charter committee meeting, and we had it on our board agenda our last meeting on February 9th, and the the board suggested it go back to the charter committee, understandably, because we were just, getting an initial reaction from them. We weren't ready to make any decision. So what I did was put the link to the Oakland Charter School Governing Board appointment process on here so we could discuss that and think about our next steps, what we want to do. So the link goes to their process. What I liked about their process is they have a description, charter school. I clicked on the link over here, Charter School Governing Board appointee, with a description there, responsibilities, etc. It didn't give me the access to what Neil found, that chart of the chart of what they were looking for in a charter board appointee. But we do have problems with at least one of our charter schools with lack of transparency, and we've had a lot of parent complaints and or teacher complaints regarding the board meetings. And so my intention here is just in hopes of more transparency in terms of the board process could happen if we appointed somebody who's knowledgeable about Brown Act and everything. That to me would be the main priority, because I'm just looking for transparency in the board meetings and better engagement of the community rather than what's happening now, since it's very difficult for people to attend when they start and then go into closed session for some long unknown period of time, hour and a half, etc. You don't know when they're coming out of a closed session, etc.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm interested in this topic, and I don't see that we need to appoint someone to every one of our charters. That isn't the intention at all. It's just that the law does give us the ability to do this. So I want to proceed to consider moving this forward. Trustee Laura, do you have comments on what I put on here?
Yes, I agree. I agree with you that we do need to pursue this. And I think what's important for us to do is make sure that we're very clear about the process and about the purpose of what it is we're trying to achieve here. And I think there's a lot of agreement with the board, the rest of the board. So I guess we just need to figure what are our next steps going to be, Trustee Butler. And I saw the example from Oakland in terms of their process, and that maybe we need a document like that for clarity in terms of what it is we're trying to do.
Right.
So, okay.
So maybe we should have Michelle click on the link and look at this general outline that's on the Oakland website.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
that one. So they have responsibilities and they talk about just the logistics, but
So the one thing I don't know is, do we need to make this a general appointment process? We're like reading their description at the top under background as permitted by education code. It says the OUSD Board of Education is appointing one district selected appointee to the governing board. Appointments will occur annually with selection occurring approximately in April. I don't think we need to say approximately in April. I mean, we could adopt some of this language and delete what's not relevant to us, is what I was thinking. Not us adopt it. We're just a charter committee, so we are just advisory to our board. But what I was thinking is we could come up with wording that we could recommend back to our board to consider adopting. But we would not need this approximately in April, for example.
yeah, we don't need to put that in there, a time specifically. And the thing I do see that's missing is, again, what our purpose is and what we hope to achieve with this. So, and we could put on there, would not be for all of our charter schools, just as.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you want to say that exactly, just because as Trustee Lewis brought up at our board meeting, does that put us at some is that a problem if we are appointing a representative to one charter or two charters, but not, are they going to see it as we're some sort of discrimination or something? I don't know exactly how she put it, but she questioned whether how we do it, whether it's across the board, consider across the board, or as opposed to one charter school. I'm not interested in trying to appoint somebody to every single one of our charters. I think that's not necessary. But I think we have to have a process that's general, and then we could go ahead with whatever, just like Oakland said, they had certain charters that they had problems with, so they appointed there. I think that's what Mr. McChesney said. Does anyone, I think we should ask for comments from our staff and our attorney. Does that make sense, what we're saying so far?
Yes, Mr. Tucker?
I'm just thinking, Trustee Butler, what the best process would be for it. I don't know if Mr. McChesney has any specific thoughts. I'd have to review some of the board policies about the appointment process to refresh my recollection on how it might work under these circumstances.
So the board policy excerpt that addresses this specific authority is included in my PowerPoint deck. It's very general. There's no specific direction about how to go about the process, right? It's just effectively memorializing that authority. And the only specific detail it offers is that in order to try to optimize the avoidance of conflicts of interest, that an appointee will not be an existing trustee of the county board or a staff member of the county office. Beyond that, there's no specific direction. I guess For what it's worth, I think it would take some time to develop an actual written protocol or policy, if that's the approach that similar to what Oakland has, and perhaps using some of their language as a good practice, but making it our own. I suppose the first real discussion point is whether or not it is the will of the board to pursue this authority. And once you have that action, again, this is all hypothetical, then the board could direct staff to develop some kind of protocol or policy or practice in writing that would perhaps come back to the board or to the charter committee for further approval, and that would initiate the first application of this authority. So those are just my thoughts about sequencing. Obviously, your choice.
Thank you, Mr. McChesney. I do have a question, just like Oakland has this process page. Did the other areas, Santa Clara and San Luis Obispo, did they have anything like that, a document?
No. So, and I mentioned that earlier. It was actually something that I asked for in the survey that I put out to all county offices, and no one offered any kind of written directives or guidance or policy. And I asked very specifically, especially with the ones I had phone conversations with.
Okay. All right.
Well, we don't have to have a policy. I mean, I know that Santa Clara, for example, just made an appointment, and then, then there was written back and forth paperwork about, the legal aspects of it.
For clarification, Trustee Butler, what Santa Clara did is they designated the authority to the superintendent. So they basically said, we give you the permission to make an appointment, and then the superintendent appointed one of her deputy or associate superintendents to fill that role. So a little different in that the board didn't actually make the appointment. They provided the authority to the superintendent in that case.
Right.
Okay, but they still, did something about this ed code.
Correct.
That says they could appoint someone. And what I'm saying is they didn't create a policy about it. They just named the superintendent to go ahead and appoint someone. I mean, we could be doing that too, but I don't know that she wants to be in that role right now.
So
I mean, I was just bringing it up because I was saying we don't have to have a policy ourselves, but it does make sense to me. That's why I suggested looking at this Oakland wording. Because this isn't necessarily a policy. This is just, it's not labeled a board policy. It's their description on their website.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add, sorry, you could, if you don't want to make a formalized policy, it's just something you want to do, after discussion with the board, you could provide direction to staff regarding how you would like to proceed. Something short, maybe, of a specific policy. That option is available to you as well. I think Mr. McChesney's point about Oakland's specific policies, you could borrow from that. I think they did a relatively good job, it sounds like, with coming up with certain procedures to guide the process.
Yeah.
Well, that's regarding getting feedback from our board. That's why I believe it was on the last board agenda, was just for that purpose. We didn't have anyone tell us, no, don't do this. This is not right. They just had questions for clarification about what about this, what about that. So I feel like we're at a point where we could be making some kind of recommendation. Well, what do you think, Trustee Lara?
Yeah, I do. I do think we could make a recommendation that we do recommendation to the board to approve a appointment And I don't know, because like, just like someone's, you were saying that there was, the board gave authority to the superintendent. So there's different options for this. And I think having that discussion at the board level would be good, unless we want to have something already concrete that we have in place and just say, okay, we want to vote on us. We want to vote to appoint someone on charter schools. But then, see, I still see the need for a process, a document with some process. I just, yeah,
Well, there's a process. Sorry.
guidelines. I'm sorry, some guidelines and some, intent there. The other reason I see a need for that is, the liability issues. And we could say, look, this is, this was what our intent was and how the process went. So I just really see a need for that, or some kind of written process. So, and we're not there yet. We're not there
Well,
yet.
Okay, so we're almost there. In my eyes, we're almost there.
Okay.
And we had the meeting last time, the board meeting. I put a lot of information on that agenda item.
Mhm.
We had one of the board members saying, you guys need to do more work on this. I thought the point of this agenda item today was to look at this more closely in hopes that we could, arrive at a potential recommendation to go back to the board. Of course, staff can tweak it and can make their suggestions, but I mean, I don't see why we couldn't take what is here from Oakland and just tweak it and make it something that we could draft to put back either on our board agenda possibly. And if we feel like it's too unwieldy to do that, it could come back to the next charter committee meeting. But like, let's skip down to responsibilities where it lists 1 through 4.
Mhm.
Charter
Mhm.
board appointees are responsible for. That's, if you have things like that, it makes it very clear, but I don't know that I would agree with all of those 4 responsibilities.
Okay.
I especially like number 4, enforcing the standards of transparent governance required by law. Training will be provided. That right there implies that the charter authorizer is going to take responsibility to make sure that appointed person has training. And I would assume that means signing them up for a Brown Act training session by, some attorney firm or something. There's lots of different ways you can sign up for Brown Act training. And rather than just putting them on the board, make sure they have that, even though I believe our charter boards do provide Brown Act training to their board members, maybe once a year, maybe only when they're first appointed. I don't know, but we would want to make sure they have that. So to me, that's really important. The one item that I think is more difficult is the number 2, which it says here, quarterly reporting to the Office of the Charter School Staff and on open session items, approximately 1 hour time commitment every 3 months. So if we feel like that seems like it could be the problematic part, because as our attorney brought up, what is their responsibility back to the county office? I don't know that they, I don't know that we want to include that, or else we, I mean, the way it's written here, it's not a conversation. It says reported electronically. That means you're sending an email, this and this important topic was discussed, or something like that.
They actually have
We could take that
a
out
form, Trustee
altogether.
Butler. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted you to know that they actually have an electronic form,
Okay.
like a Google form. I believe there's an example of it in the notice, the OUSD notice attachments that I provided, but I looked at it. It covers kind of what are the big issues that were discussed, any concerns, it's a standardized questionnaire that those appointees submit on a regular basis.
And so, Neil, since you're more familiar with that form, do you feel like that becomes awkward in terms of what's the role of the appointed charter board member?
I mean, I guess to go back to some of Mr. Tucker's legal opinion, I could foresee scenarios where an individual put in that position that has this reporting obligation could all of a sudden be wondering, do I talk about this or do I not talk about that? Or do I raise this issue or do I not raise this issue, given I have a duty of loyalty here and at least a perceived duty of loyalty to the agency that appointed me that I'm reporting back to. But I think I think Oakland has done a fair job of trying to put in writing a clear line between those two entities. But there will still probably be scenarios that come up over time where there's confusion or the possibility of someone disclosing or not disclosing information that they should. So that's really the risk here is what benefit do you gain, and is that worth the potential risks that it engenders?
Okay, just a few comments. So I'm kind of picturing in my head an outline of a process, a document that would that we could put together. And in this document, I see, like I had said, the statement of purpose, why we're doing this. And in terms of duties and responsibilities, I really like, one of the things we want to make sure is that the Brown Act is followed. So the training for the Brown Act, that's a big priority. And also that this person is going to follow the protocols of that charter schools board meeting. You see what I'm saying? So that's got to be a commitment. They're not going to, violate any of those protocols. So that's important, of course. And I'm just thinking if there's another word besides report back, or but rather that, suppose our charter office has a question about what's going on there, that they could go to that person and ask them, and so that there could be conversation and dialogue. Doesn't involve the board necessarily, but more the office and that person that's appointed. And then what else? Yeah, just the duties and responsibility, a simple kind of document about that process. And the specifics about appointment, I don't have some suggestions right now, but so that's kind of what I'm visualizing. What do you think, Trustee Butler?
Well, I think you're right. The word reporting is not the right word. Maybe it's that there's, maybe it's informing, maybe, I'm not even sure we should have that item number 2 at all. And when you said it was a Google form that they use, isn't like emails. I was thinking, as being a board member myself, your emails are subject to public records requests. I don't know if a Google form is that or not, but I also just realized, wait a minute, I'm not sure wouldn't their emails be subject to a public records request as well? They wouldn't want to be putting anything in an email anyway, in writing, that is closed session, and they aren't supposed to share closed session at all. So anyway, I'm jumping around topics, but I'm not sure whether we need that. I think that item number 2 is the problematic item. I think that person who's being appointed, their whole job is just to do a good job as a charter board member on the charter school board. And we do most of our work at the beginning by making sure they're trained in the Brown Act and the transparency processes that are supposed to happen they could be a resource to the to our charter staff, but the same way that the charter staff would maybe contact the board president of the charter school if they had a question about what was going on, it would be a second person. Maybe they contact that person that we appointed to find out their take on what's going on. But I don't think it's, well, I don't know. That to me is up to whatever makes most sense to our charter staff and the attorney, how we can tweak that particular topic. And maybe it's not have it at all. Maybe it's just the other three, 1, 3, and 4. What the requirements are, what the responsibilities are. Maybe that responsibility is just be available to update, I don't know, update or I don't know. I don't want to say anything that gets misconstrued or misunderstood. To me, that's the least important topic. The most important thing is number 1, 3, and 4. So let me leave it at that. But I was hoping we could come up with possible recommendation to send back to our board and then allow our staff and our attorney to weigh in as well, either now or in between now and our, if they need to go do more homework and then weigh in more at our board meeting or whenever we next talk about this. That's what I was thinking.
So Trustee Butler, are you thinking that we can make a recommendation or bring to the board? Now I kind of lost my train of thought here. So I'm trying to think, what are we ready to do now? What are we prepared to do right now? And that we could come up with a document, a draft of a document that just, it's like an outline that we're going to have a process document that's includes these things.
Well, why can't, yeah.
Is that what you're thinking we could bring to the board at this point?
Why couldn't we take this, what's in front of us, and scroll down? Oh, no, it isn't. Okay, take this, what's in front of us, and wordsmith it to work for us, and then recommend that to go forward to the board. And I don't think it would be that hard. Like I said, you would take out, you would change the wording, you delete OUSD as permitted by the Ed Code. The County Board of Education is appointing period. Okay, selected district selected. So this says district selected. That sounds to me like the district is selecting it rather than the Board of Education making the appointment, but I'm not sure what they do.
I'm sorry, if you guys have any questions for, I know Neil was already scheduled out at 10 o'clock and he definitely has a meeting at 10:30. I'll need to go. I'm not sure about Mike Tucker's schedule. This was only on the calendar for an hour. So maybe if you guys have questions for these guys, and we can continue together, but I know for sure that Neil has to leave within the next 5 minutes.
Okay, so thanks for telling us that. Maybe Consuelo and I can continue working on this, and then, but I have one quick question for Neil, for Mr. McChesney. In Oakland's case, did the board make the appointment, or did they allow the district to make the appointment?
No, it's my understanding, and I believe this is in the implementation plan document, that the board created a subcommittee of the board, just like this is a subcommittee, that was specifically charged with making appointments. So they would be the ones that would go through the selection process and take final action. The district and staff obviously facilitated all that, but it is the trustees that made the decision, that subcommittee of trustees.
Huh, okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much for coming, and I know we kept you longer, but yeah, I think Trustee Butler and I can have more discussion on this, and yeah.
Before I go, Trustee Laura, if it's all right with you, I just want to make sure I was being as clear as I possibly could regarding my opinion as to whether or not this is advisable. In 2012, the board did receive a separate legal opinion from a different law firm, which I also reviewed as part of my analysis. In that opinion, that attorney specifically stated he did not recommend that the county board appoint an individual to a charter board of directors. And you're obviously free to come up with your own decisions, and I've advised you regarding the potential risks. And I'm stopping short of echoing his recommendation. I'll just say that based on what I added, it is inadvisable in my opinion, although I'm stopping short of recommending that you don't do it because it does allow it in the education code. And I think I have provided you with information regarding the risks. And as I said, you're free to make your decision as you see fit as well. But I did want to just make sure that I was clear about that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Booker.
And I do have to sign off to join this other meeting, but obviously I will be there in attendance at the next regular board meeting and happy to report on any of this information or support in any way I can.
Okay, great. Thank you,
you.
Mr. McCluskey. Thank you both.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Sarah, we don't want to go on too long here, do we?
No, I think we can do this relatively quickly.
What if we bring this document to the
Mhm.
board and share our notes in terms of changing it? And then discussion with possible action. Would that work?
Well, I know one of our board members thinks that what he considers committee work should be done in the committee. So I didn't want to, I think we should, yes, that would work, but I think we should make a recommendation about how we would want to edit this. And I think we need to do that right now. I think we can do that quickly. What?
No, that's what I was, that's what I was saying, and we share our notes at that time, but so that they can see what, but you think we should bring them a finished document, huh? And
Well,
I
I'm
don't,
not sure what you mean by share our notes. I was going to recommend we like delete certain phrases or sentences here. Is that what you mean by our notes?
yeah, and because wordsmithing, all of that takes time to do all of that, I think. And I don't know if we have that time to do that. It really does take time to to write a document.
Whether we have that time right now.
Yeah, I don't know if we have that time right now. So what do you think?
Well,
it's
I don't think it's that
13 hour-
complicated. Let me just make a recommendation, okay? And then we
Okay.
can
Go
we
ahead.
can decide if we want to think about it more. I mean, if we can't come up with a recommendation, we shouldn't be putting it back on the board meeting agenda.
Okay.
That's, they give us direction to, hash it through more and then bring it back. So if we just bring it back and say, well, we want to discuss this, they're gonna like, well, why didn't you do this in the committee? Anyway, let me just say what I think that should happen here. I think
Okay.
going through this, starting up at the top, background as permitted by Ed Code with the number, you delete OUSD and write Contra Costa County Board of Education, appointing one district selected appointee. I think you take out district selected, is appointing one appointee to the governing boards of select charter schools, period. Appointments will, okay. Delete that whole next sentence because we don't need to say when appointments will occur.
Right.
Delete the next sentence. It talks
Okay.
about January 2021. Delete the next sentence.
Once confirmed, that one
No,
The one that starts with
was-
appointment.
next sentence was appointments will continue.
will continue. Take that one out. Okay.
And then leave in that last sentence. Once confirmed, by the Contra Costa County Board of Education, the appointee will serve as a full voting member of the Charter Schools Board. Okay, so that's the first paragraph.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so the next sentence, applicants, that's fine. The next sentence, target skills, that's fine, but then it should end.
after the word oversight.
Oversight, financial oversight, period. And then delete the sentence that says for the current openings, we are seeking candidates. Delete that whole sentence.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you can include the last sentence. Additionally, all applicants will be screened for potential conflicts of interest prior to confirmation. Okay, so that's the text. And what we could do is have this whole thing and have it like track changes where you can see everything, but you see it lined out so that board members know this is what we are recommending. Then under responsibilities, charter board appointees are responsible for participation. Number 1 is fine. Number 3 and number 4 is fine. And I don't know what to do about 2, but we might want to just delete it altogether.
I would delete, yeah, delete it.
Delete number 2. Okay, then we just line that out.
That's it, right?
And that's it. Yeah, that would be my recommendation, to bring that to our board meeting. Let's see, do we need anything else?
I can
They
put
they
that-
had an application form or something.
Oh, I can
Go ahead.
put this into like an email that has the original redlined final and email you guys
Oh, okay.
if you
Yeah,
want.
when
And
you
then,
say email us, you mean email Consuela, Trustee Laura and I,
correct.
and to verify it before it goes forward to the board agenda.
Right.
Okay,
That's, okay,
and
good.
then if you could, maybe you also want to at some point, send it to Neil and Mr. Tucker, just so they can see what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if we need to check it first or what, but
Sure.
That sounds good.
yeah, we have our agenda setting meeting on Wednesday, tomorrow.
Okay,
So,
You want me to click this word apply and see what comes up?
apply.
apply. Oh, yeah,
So
yeah,
that-
please, go ahead.
Okay.
Ah, there we go. That's their application.
Okay.
Oh, it's online, huh?
Well, in our case, we don't want to ask him what boards do you want to apply for?
Right.
No, this sounds like a generic one.
Yeah, it's relatively generic. I don't think we need to be approving an application form at
Okay.
the board level.
No.
But what we do, but I'm glad you brought that up, because the other part of this is we need the board to know we would take applications. The rest of the process is we would solicit applications for this appointment and then have a time period where people could apply, and who's going to review the applications and recommend or whatever.
Yeah, we'll have that. Yeah, we have to work that out also. Okay. Are we finished with our 4.4 charter board appointment? We have something to take to the board, right?
Well, is the board going to expect us to say who's going to make the appointment? We're not quite finished, because I think I think we would want to be making the appointment, not delegate it to our staff. In the case of, like what Mr. McChesney was saying, in the case of Oakland, they established a subcommittee. Well, Oakland has 7 board members, I believe, right? So they could have had a subcommittee of 3 of them appointing. In our case, we only have 5 board members. I mean, I suppose the charter committee could be making the appointment, but I don't know. It's up. I think it's either the board or a committee makes the appointment.
But the charter committee recommends the appointment. That we look at people that are applying and we pick 1 or 2 or whichever, and we bring that to the board for their recommendation. How about that as a
Okay,
process?
yeah, the charter committee could vet the applications.
Yeah,
And we might find that it's hard to get any applications, so we might not be,
true. That's
could
very
be
true.
just-
That can happen.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so that's fine.
okay. All right,
right.
what else?
And then, so we can move on to the next topic, which is almost to the end, and we're already over time, I know. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Trustee
Can
Laura.
we put 4.5 on our next agenda?
Yes, that's fine with me.
Okay, so the 4.5 will be on the next agenda. And our, maybe we can go ahead and set a time that we want to have our next meeting. Trustee,
That's a good idea.
okay, so why don't we look at our calendars? And what would be good, this was actually a good time for me.
Do you
So
guys
how
mind if
about
I stop sharing so I can pull up Neil's calendar for him?
Sure, that's
Okay.
fine.
Thanks.
yes.
Okay.
Great. And today.
So we
is-
want it about a month from now or what? Well, this actually, March is the month where we have 2 board meetings. We have a board meeting on the 9th and the 23rd. I'm just saying that because this date was picked so that we had time before the board meeting if we wanted to get something on the agenda.
Okay. Next month or 2 weeks? What are you thinking? I'm thinking in 2 weeks that we should meet.
Okay, well, that about the 14th then.
The 14th sounds good.
Can we do 10 instead of 9?
That'd be better for
Sure.
me.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. Okay, so Neil's available from 10 to 11 on 10 to 11 on the 14th. Do you
Is
think
that
that since
better
we,
than the afternoon? Anytime in the afternoon's okay with me too.
he doesn't work in the afternoon?
Oh,
He's only
okay.
part-time, yeah.
Yeah, mornings also.
Should we do 9:30 in case it goes over? So that he'd be able to stay with us the whole time. Do you think that that's good for
Sure.
you guys? 9:30? Okay.
That's fine. Is that all right with you? Yeah.
Yes.
9:30. Okay.
9:30 is okay. Okay. That sounds good.
I'll just book it for an hour and a half and just see. We haven't had a meeting this long, but I think that we had big topics. So I'll book it for an hour and a half. We'll see where we lie, and then that will determine the next one after that. But in the meantime, I think that we need to go by what, the meeting timeline is, if you will. Okay,
Right.
very good,
Okay.
very good.
And under or are we on future agenda items?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so we were going to talk also, we were going to try to get charter visits scheduled. Just want to bring it up to Michelle. Maybe you could remind Mr. McChesney about that. And in the minutes from last month, it said we were going to have that as an agenda topic. We could make it an agenda topic just to talk about how the charter visits are going or something. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
well,
know.
putting it here in future agenda items, it will be a topic. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So we have that, and we have the MOU template that we're postponing from this meeting. And then we
Yes.
have the board appointment topic as a placeholder in case we need it on there.
Yeah, follow up. Okay,
But then we should also hear from Mr. McChesney about the research on what other charter authorizers are doing about the MOUs and the extension of the, because of the timeline of the legislature.
Yes. And any
That's-
other topics that either you or I, trustee Butler, if we think of something we want to put on there, we'll just contact Michelle and
Okay.
have them. Okay,
That
we'll
works.
do that. Okay, so 5.1, committee chair will adjourn the meeting. Are we ready there? Are you ready, trustee Butler?
Ready,
meeting-
thank you.
Okay, is adjourned at 10:42.